Hey everyone, this is the Wounded Womb, Mind of Lilith, and today I wanted to ask the audience some questions about the show Love After Lockup. Now, I watched it a few months ago. I saw a couple of episodes, and it was hard for me to get into the show because I was like, are these people exploiting each other? And if so, what kind of relationship outcomes do they expect to have based on that dynamic? And me, I'm always a person who thinks deeply into things, and I don't like to waste my time thinking about things that I feel like have no purpose because it doesn't go anywhere. So I was watching the show, and I remember Deontay, the black guy with whose eyes didn't close. Nicole, the lady with the cartoon character nose. I remember Stan, the guy with the comb over and the weird fetishes, and I believe his girlfriend's name was Lisa with the Barbie doll hair. I remember Brittany and her heavy wigs and her boyfriend. I forgot her boyfriend's name. And who else? Rachel and Doug. I think his name is Doug. I remember those couples, and that's pretty much. Oh yeah, there was somebody who didn't have any teeth who was cheating with no teeth. And then there was a woman who was working in the jail, and then she ended up sleeping with one of the inmates, and she lost her job only for the former inmates, to come home and not want to sleep with her. I forgot their names. They didn't really get much scenes from when I was watching it. And then, I had some personal issues come up, so I kind of forgot about the show for a little bit. But my question to the audience is, if there are two people who are exploiting each other, right? The person who is outside of jail looking for love inside of prison because they know the person will be dependent on them for resources. They know the person isn't going anywhere. They can control them, right? And then the person on the inside who's in prison, they're also exploiting the person on the outside because they don't really want to be with them in many cases. They're just using them for a place to stay and resources for when they get out of jail because they don't want to deal with the uncomfortable transition of being an ex-con who has to live in a halfway house or a motel, who has to, find a place to live and all this extra stuff that comes along with being an ex-con. Is this a mutually exploitative situation, or is one person benefiting from it more than the other? If that's the case, when the relationships blow up, is anybody really surprised about this? Are the couples on the show really surprised? Like, for example, Brittany and her boyfriend. I forgot his name. I think his name is Ray. And Ray has six-figure restitution debt from what I remember. And he didn't tell Brittany this until after he got out of prison. I think they were seeing each other for a couple of years while he was behind bars. In my mind, I'm like, would he be with her if he didn't have this debt, right? We keep having conversations in the Black community about lopsided relationships that are exploitative, how narcissists use people for things. They use their partners for sex or attention or money, then they throw them away. In these situations, when I see Ray and how he engages with Brittany, would he be with her if he didn't have this debt? Will he still be with her if she paid his debt off? The situation with Deontay and Nicole. He's obsessed with this girl. From what I saw, he was obsessed with her, but she did absolutely nothing and had no redeeming qualities. Seeing the kind of men and women she dated before Deontay, he's not even her type. And I'm not talking about racially, I'm talking about just personality and demeanor. She likes people with an edge to them who aren't nice people. She likes the bad boy thing, right? You can tell based on her relationship with her ex-boyfriend and her ex-girlfriend. And Deontay is head over heels for somebody who is like he's obsessed with her. So now, is he mentally ill? And if he's mentally ill, who is exploiting who in a situation? Nicole knows that she's not attracted to him like that. She knows that he's not her type. She knew it before she got out of prison. But he wanted to be her boyfriend, and he wanted to do things to prove that he was interested in her. And some people feel better when they can take care of somebody else. There are some relationship partners who feel better when they can take care of their spouse or their partner. They feel worthy. They feel like they are earning their keep in the relationship. And that's another conversation in and of itself. But I'm just a little bit concerned about the exploitation of the people on this cast. I may be speaking from a position of privilege because I've never saw myself sleeping with someone or being in a relationship with someone that I did not like out of necessity. That didn't seem like a relationship to me, and I never wanted to be with someone who felt like they had to be with me out of necessity, which is why I have a certain disposition towards marriage, the contract of marriage in itself. I do believe that marriage is a beautiful institution if it's correct, if it's functional and healthy. But to try to force someone to love you with a contract or a sheet of paper, to try to force someone to stay in your life and stay with you because they are married to you, that's when the resentment comes in my opinion, because you're not really with the person, or the person's not really with you because you love them. It's because of a sheet of paper, and then it becomes toxic because one or both parties resents that dynamic. Like, some people feel like their spouses are holding them back from living their best life. And I'll talk about that in more detail in the future. But for this show, Love After Lockup, even with Stan and Lisa is street smart. She knows that Stan is using her for sex. And Stan kind of knows that she's using him for resources. So what he does is he kind of nickels and dimes her into doing the things that he wants to do. But at the same time, she knows this. And in a way, Stan kind of has to do this in order to ensure that he's not being completely milked for money. She doesn't like him like that. She likes the convenience of being in a relationship with a man who has some resources. She likes not having to live in a motel. She likes having someone who can buy her things, but that's not her first choice for a partner. So who's being exploited in this situation though? The person who has a need for something, or the person who is giving because they have a need for emotional support, but maybe they're not physically attractive enough to get that without this situation. Maybe they don't have, maybe they're too old or something. Like, who is benefiting from this? If you have two people who are trying to exploit each other and acting like that's not what's going on, what kind of outcomes are you going to get in this show? What's her name? My favorite character on the show thus far was Rachel. I loved Rachel, and I knew Doug was a raging sociopathic narcissist. And I'm talking about like a diagnosable clinical condition. It was obvious. He didn't care about anybody but himself. But what I liked about Rachel was she sees a situation for what it is. Once she has enough evidence and facts, she doesn't lie to herself about certain things. Doug did a good job of lying to her about the nature of their relationship. And yes, she was naive and everything else, and she wanted to believe in love, but once she got the receipts and the evidence, she moved accordingly. She did not have any resentment toward this child. She affirmed her position. Some women will keep hiding their heads in the sand and acting like nothing is going on while their partner is doing the dirty. But once she found out what it was, she moved quickly and did not allow herself to continue to be played as soon as she found out the truth about their relationship. On top of that, she made sure her money was still straight so she could leave quickly. She wasn't relying on him for anything. She didn't need him to stay in her place. She could move him out relatively quickly. She could move on quickly. She had a job to go back to stay focused on and rebuild her finances. She had a lot of things still going for her. She did not allow her relationship with Doug to destroy her life. That's one of the reasons why I liked Rachel the most. She seemed the most well-adjusted and healthy as far as her mentality about her relationship. Brittany, like I said, I feel like she's a very controlling woman, and she feels like she can control a man with her money. And her boyfriend, Ray, seems like he's given up on life. He's despondent. Imagine being in a situation where you owe $6,000 or a 6-figure debt. Sorry, not $6,000. He owes over $100,000 in restitution for his crimes. But Ray will not be able to get the kind of employment that he needs to pay that off in a reasonable amount of time. So that's going to affect his ability to buy a home, his ability to do certain things because of that debt. So is he with Brittany because she can help him pay it off? Or does Brittany care as long as she has companionship and a husband? It's sketchy for me. And again, I may be speaking from a position of privilege because I never had a desire to be with someone for money. I think it's disrespectful for a man to come to me thinking he can buy me or buy my loyalty because he has money. I do agree that men should provide and protect and do all this great stuff. But if I don't want to be with you, there's nothing that you can buy me that can ensure that will happen. It's almost like you're trying to force me to be with you. I don't deal with that too well. I like to have full agency in relationships and control of myself. And I want my partner to have the same thing. So this is foreign to me to look for people in jail. The people in prison, right? The prisoners who are being approached by these people on the outside, they know that the people who are choosing them, they may not have many options. And so the respect level is already in the dirt from day one. So the people in jail who are criminal minded. So they have the propensity to be low-key exploitative themselves. They look for opportunities to enrich themselves at the expense of other people. That's just the nature of criminality, right? So if they're in these situations and they see the people from the outside coming toward them and they're putting themselves out there, are they exploiting the people on the outside too, knowing that they don't have many options, which is why they're looking in prison? Or are the people on the outside exploiting them because they're trapped in a cage and I can control you with my money and my resources and my home and you have to do what I say? Even if I say I love you, you can't love somebody if you don't give them freedom. If a person doesn't have freedom and they have to be with you, or else you're thrown in the street like the baby did with Danny Lay, then is that love or is that something else? And as I was watching this show, I was thinking about this debate that Black men had with Black women about Black women choosing, quote unquote, white slave masters during slavery. And the question was, how can you choose to be with your slave master? It's already a situation where there's an unequal distribution of power. So the slave woman may not have really had a choice to be with the person who had more provisions and resources than the men who were in her community who were being enslaved. And I was thinking about that dynamic here. Like, if I'm not free, am I really with you? Are we really in a relationship? If I have to be with you. And this is, again, why I've always had this suspicion about marriage and why many marriages don't work. People like to be free. People like to be able to have a full life of happiness and expression and joy and creativity. When you get married, unfortunately, people think that being married means that you can't have fun anymore. You can't learn anymore. You can't be independent. You can't be your own person. You can't have your own life. That's what some married people think, and then it becomes toxic and destructive. I don't believe in, people cheating when they're married. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have to be your own person when you're married. You have to have some level of independence in order to fully appreciate the relationship for what it is. If you're stuck to the person, you're like, well, you got to do this because you're married and you got to do that when you're married. That's artificial. And then the person that you're married to begins to resent that, especially if you get married young. At some point, it becomes constricting and just, it's toxic, like swamp water. There's no oxygen flowing through the relationship. It's just you stuck to the person because you're in a contract, and that's not how human nature works. Which is why, again, back to the show. I'm going to get back to watching Love After Lockup again, but I'm confused about the point of the show. If both people know that they are in a situation that is, maybe they don't know that they're exploiting the other person and taking advantage of them. Maybe they think that it's love to control someone with your money, your resources, or to control someone because you know that they are emotionally stunted and insecure to the point where they have to go to prison to find someone to love them. It's complicated. It is very complicated, but I'm just like, I'm asking the audience their opinion. Like, what do you guys think about the show in general? Is it just entertainment, or are we aware that these couples most likely won't work out because there is an element of abuse involved? Not saying that it's always the case. Not saying that you can't find love with someone who's been in prison before. There are plenty of examples of this, but the power dynamic is lopsided initially. And so, I don't know. I would love to hear your feedback about it. But yeah, the guy Deontay, and he has a fetish for this girl. He doesn't even see her as a human being. He's even turned her into an object. Nicole Jr., I think, the little doll thing he had that he was using because Nicole wouldn't sleep with him. He's obviously objectified her sexually. He's obsessed with that. And like I said, it's not, I really can't get mad at him about it because I think he was celibate for a while, waiting for her to come out of jail, which is understandable. But you could see him losing weight during the show. Deontay looked like he was losing a lot of weight. He looked very stressed. He looked like he wasn't being fed. He wasn't being poured into. He was giving all this energy to this narcissist. Nicole, from what I'm seeing, she looks like she has some sort of personality disorder. And I think it could be BPD. She's bisexual. She's a thief. She has no moral compass. She has no guilt. There's nothing. She's hypersexual. All of the traits of a borderline personality type, she kind of has those and embodies those. And they attract codependents too. It is not a coincidence that most people with personality disorders have partners. They have relationship partners because they don't like to be by themselves. And there are always going to be people who want to serve narcissists, who want to serve somebody. But at the same time, as they're serving, they're getting something out of it too. They're getting their own source of supply. So it becomes a mutually exploitative relationship. So if both people are taking advantage of each other, is nobody taking advantage of each other? Does it cancel out at that point? And so, yeah, that's my quick take on it. I'm just curious as to what the audience gets out of this show and what they expect to happen with the couples. Even with the other reality show, like, what is it? Ready to Love? And put a ring on it. And, it's so easy for men to find suitable women that I find it hard to believe that these men have to go to a reality show to find partnership and companionship with them. I just find it very difficult to believe that. In some cities, there are 10 women to one man. We have the internet. We have social media. We have so many resources to connect with other people. It's very difficult for me to believe that these grown men have a hard time finding spouses or relationship partners. And we can see based on the outcomes of the show. Usually the women are more serious. In most cases, they're more serious about finding somebody than the men because the men they already have access to lots of women. If you hear a lot of the backstory of the men on the show who are chosen, a lot of them have many partners. And they always say, well, I wasn't ready at the time, right? Or I didn't know what I wanted because I was young and this and that and the third. I was hurting. I was running through women because I was hurting from something that happened 15 years ago. Stuff like that. I can't take men like that seriously. Now the women, yes, they may want to find someone more than these men because it's a lot harder for women to find attractive, healthy, productive members of society, especially men. So, I get it for the women's perspective, but for the men, I feel like the men are exploiting the opportunity too. They're taking advantage of the situation. They know these women want something, and then they'll dangle the potential of a relationship in front of them just to get access to the woman's body and her mind and her heart, right? To feed them supply. And it goes to nothing. Usually the relationship ends up being toxic and dysfunctional before the end of the show. So I don't know, it's hard for me to take these people seriously because I'm like, that you're not serious about this. You have a girlfriend that you were just talking to a couple of days ago before you came to this show. Why are you here acting like you want to find love with somebody else? You just want to look for other opportunities, but you're not really taking it seriously. There's so many men who were exposed on the show for being liars and manipulators. I'm like, I can't. Yeah, that's rough. I would love you guys' take on that. So thank you for listening again. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.